I'm Amber, and this is Mom's New Identity. If you're here, thank you so much for tuning in. Here on Mom's New Identity, I am really just sharing my journey of healing and self-discovery outside of what the entire world has told me I'm supposed to be as a mother, as a wife, as a woman in general. And so my goal here is really just to share my journey and my thoughts and beliefs and experiences as honestly as I possibly can and as transparently as I can, so that you will hopefully be inspired to do the same and live your truth and do it do it unapologetically. So let's get into it. If you're not already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and click that bell so you can get notifications whenever I post. I always post a new video like this on Saturdays. And if you watched my video last week, you will know that in this video, I plan on talking about how starting to heal changed my relationship with money. Before we get into it, I do want to remind you this is my Cycle Breaker hat. If you haven't checked it out already, you can find it on my Etsy store. So if you're a cycle breaker, the one breaking generational cycles and deciding to heal the trauma in your family and do better for your children and your future children, this hat is for you. And sorry, I always say, before we get into it, I am considering starting a Facebook group. Going through a journey of healing and discovery can sometimes be a little lonely. And so I feel like having a sense of community really just makes that feel a little less lonely. And so if you're interested in joining a Facebook group, let me know in the comments below. I've already had one person say that they want to do that, not including myself, of course. But if I get at least like 5 to 10 people, I'll go ahead and get that Facebook group started. I do have a page on Facebook, so if you want to go ahead and follow that, you certainly can. All my socials are linked below in the description. Before we get into my relationship with money and how that's developed and changed over time, I do want to throw this disclaimer out, okay? As always, I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a professional. Everything I say in this video is strictly just my opinion, beliefs, experiences. So everything that I say is not always going to apply to your situation, okay? And so if you really, really need guidance, the best thing I can suggest for you to do is go seek professional help. Go seek out therapy. I had mentioned in my last video in my experience with therapy that I may go into the detailed process of what that can look like to go find a therapist. If you want to see a video where I talk about that, I'd be more than happy to. Just let me know in the comments below and I will certainly do that. Before I talk about how like my mindset really changed when it came to my money, I have to talk about the main things that were contributing to my mindset before it started to shift. The first three things. Thing number one, my childhood. My parents struggled, okay? Like, my parents were broke, okay? And they never taught me anything about money. And that was hard because I just couldn't really understand, like, why I couldn't always have the things that I wanted or have the experiences that I always wanted to have or go on trips. Like, I never quite understood that. And the few moments when I did experience a significant amount of joy in my life was when my mom would make a big show of Christmas, right? She would buy us all these gifts and we almost always got everything that we asked for. And that was always such a like joyous time in my childhood that I feel like that contributed to my belief that if we just had money or if money wasn't an issue, things would be happier. And that just, it wasn't true. It's not true. Because there was a lot of other things going on that I didn't quite understand as a child that I now understand as an adult that were contributing to the sadness or pain that I experienced in my childhood. So the next thing, which even further solidified that belief that money would change things, is I began working in the banking industry. And I really like soaked up as much information as I could working in the bank, working for a financial advisor, financial planner, I obtained multiple licenses, like securities licenses, insurance licenses. And so I gathered all this information that I felt like not everybody gets access to, right? Like our education system does not teach people about money. That became extremely apparent to me when I worked in the banking industry. After I left the banking industry because of COVID and becoming a stay-at-home mom, I had started a page where I did like TikToks and Reels where I was trying to educate people about money. And that type of education is important. I absolutely think that is important. I stopped it because I think the underlying reason why I started the channel is because I felt like, well, if I can empower people to educate themselves about money, then I can help them change their situation. So really that was this belief that, oh, if you can control your money and your budget and stuff, then you can have a happier life. Again, not true. So the third thing, this one's kind of scary to talk about because I don't want to like get attacked, I guess you could say, like legally, like for legal reasons. I have to tread lightly in talking about this, but I was part of an MLM, aka pyramid scheme, whatever you want to call it. Call it what you want, but you can definitely make a lot more money investing and doing other stuff than you can in an MLM. They literally show you the numbers. So actually, funny I mentioned that. I am going to go into this in a bit more detail and talk about how being in an MLM really just caused me to really lose myself a lot. Like I'm undoing a lot of the very, in my opinion, toxic beliefs that were deeply indoctrinated into my thinking. I'm now undoing that, and so they're not as hyped up as they seem to be. So MLM culture, um, that really contributed to my belief that money was gonna make everything better. Like money was the answer. Like get rid of your job, you gotta be financially free. Like and burn yourself out, work your butt off. If you don't work your butt off, if you're not financially free, it's because you're lazy. Like not even acknowledging the fact that these systems are extremely oppressive to women and people of color, and like they have to change. Like that there's so I overall, those three things really made me believe this one thing is that your life will be happier once you have a lot of money, right? I really internalized this belief and I clung to my money and clung to my budget like it was my saving grace. And my husband and I were very good with our money. Like we were never in a position where we didn't know how we were going to pay our bills the next month before having kids. That brings me to my next point of really when my mindset started to change. I got pregnant the second time, not intentionally. It wasn't part of my plan, but it was part of the plan, if you want to put it that way. I had to leave the workforce. And I actually at the time made more money than my husband did. Okay. And obviously, when I left the workforce, bye bye money, bye bye income. So then we had to rely on him to be the primary provider for our household. And that was extremely difficult. At one point, you guys, like, we didn't know how we were going to pay our rent the next month. We have never, my husband and I, before having children, were so good at like saving and managing our money. We're always like 1 to 2 months ahead on paying our bills. And despite all of that knowledge, despite all of that experience, despite all of that saving and working, we ended up in a hole. And that was just like the universe, God, however you want to refer to it, sending me a message to remind me that I am not in control. Because really, my mindset around money was that if I could control it well enough, then, I could maintain and I could be happy. And that's just all based in fear. And if you know anything about making decisions based in fear, that's the worst thing you can do. if you constantly live in a state of fear, it's always going to steal your joy. And obviously, that doesn't necessarily apply to every situation. But when it comes to money, making decisions based in fear is never going to allow you to experience abundance. Okay. So we get to this point where we don't know how we're going to pay our rent next month. And fortunately, we made do. We figured it out. And it was during that time that I realized, like, no matter how much I think I'm in control when it comes to my money, I'm not. And you know what's crazy too is that in that time, I started to meditate. I started journaling. I started working on my own personal goals. I started asking myself, what am I passionate about? What do I really like? What gets me going? What fuels me? What motivates me? What's my purpose? Right? And I read a handful of books, which I will share in a TikTok or reel, the few books that really helped me to start to unpack some of this stuff. But I really started to go discover myself. And you know what happened, you guys? I discovered inner peace. And my bank account was not where I wanted it to be, okay? Like, and it's still not, okay? Like, I would love for us to be completely debt-free. We are not. I would love for us to have a big, beautiful home, possibly a couple, maybe a rental property. We don't have that, okay? So it's like, I still have those goals, but you know what? I'm not going to base my joy and happiness on me getting those things. My joy and happiness starts in here, And it took me getting to this position of just rock bottom, in my opinion, when it came to our finances, to recognize that no matter how much money you have in the bank, your joy is not based on your bank account. It's not. And it shouldn't be. But the problem is that hustle culture and MLMs and your job and whatever else, maybe your upbringing, will keep you in that space of just like, oh, I always have to have more. I'm always going to be broke. I'm always going to be broke. If you know anything about manifestation, or if you've studied or read about it, you'll know that whatever you speak, good or bad, you are attracting. You are manifesting more often than not. And so if you're constantly speaking lack, if you're constantly speaking scarcity, you're never going to have enough. And I guarantee you guys, okay, I don't want to guarantee, but I promise you guys that in a handful of years, ideally it would be a year, but in a handful of years, maybe I'd say 2 to 4 years, I'm going to be in a very different financial position than I am right now. And I'm going to look back at this video and I'm going to be like, told you guys, because I no longer speak lack. I no longer speak scarcity. I know that our situation is going to change. And we're going to have a house one day. I don't know when, but we will. We're going to be debt-free one day. I don't know when, but we will. And I will continue to do the habits and behaviors necessary to get to those places. Obviously, you can't be blind to that. You can't just speak something and then not take the proper action steps to achieve that. But it will change. And so that is now my mindset when it comes to money. I barely check my bank account, okay? So, well, I don't want to say my husband does it. And it's not because my husband's handling it. It's because what's the point? My bank account isn't going to magically grow by $200,000, right? That's not going to happen. I mean, I go in there to make sure certain bills are being paid on time, just get an idea of, okay, before I spend this much, do I have enough to spend this on this business expense, or, whatever it may be. That's mainly the reason, just to kind of check up. But I'm not constantly stressing myself out about how much I have in the bank account. I don't do it. I don't do it anymore. It's unnecessary. So if you're listening to this, if you're still here, first of all, thank you so much. I appreciate you for sticking around. But if you're still here, I want you to know, or I hope that this message has inspired you to maybe reconsider how some of the things that you've experienced in your life has really shaped your beliefs and ideas around money. And actually, I just found this podcast, and I've followed this creator for a while, actually, when I started my banker page that I no longer do. Her first 100K, I think it's called. I'll link it in the description below, but she actually has a podcast. It's called The Financial Feminist. Yeah, I think Financial Feminist. I'm really excited to go through her episodes, but I just recently listened to an episode that was talking about like MLMs and how it's just really toxic. Okay. And so that kind of inspired me to make the decision to share my experience with MLMs and all of that, and how that really negatively impacted me, my mental health in a lot of ways, my marriage, my identity, my sense of self, how it impacted all of that. I do plan on talking about that more in my next video. So if you're not subscribed, friendly reminder to subscribe so that you can get a reminder of when I post that video. Like I said, I post every Saturday. And if you're interested in starting a Facebook group or being part of a Facebook group that I plan on starting, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you. Love you. And let's continue to heal, grow, and rediscover ourselves together. So until next time.